in session. You may be seated.
Anyone know where Mr. Feiger is?
In the restroom.
Okay. Who is plaintiff's next witness? I'm sorry, who? Is she here in the courtroom? Okay, would you please step forward into the witness box, please? It's right here. Ma'am, would you please raise your right hand so that you can be sworn?
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony that you are about to give in the case now in hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Would you state your name and spell it for the court reporter?
I'm sorry?
Would you state your name
Yes, Angela Benefil.
and spell it for the court reporter?
Angela, A-N-G-E-L-A, Benefil, B as in boy, E-N-E-F-I-E-L.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Ms. Benefield. Will you please tell the court and jury your name again?
Angela Benefil.
And you and I have never met before other than saying hello just a moment ago.
Correct.
And you've appeared here today pursuant as a result of my request because you were the investigator in the, do you call it the coroner's case or the autopsy report? What do you say?
Coroner's case.
Okay. Are you still an investigator for the Sedgwick County
Yes, I am.
coroner? Tell the court and jury what you do.
I am a medical investigator.
Okay. What does that mean?
Basically,
I apologize to interrupt. My understanding was she was called as a records custodian. She's not listed on any witness list. I don't have any objection to whatever records custodian testimony she might offer, but I do object to undisclosed testimony beyond that.
Forgive me, Your Honor. I'm incredulous at this point. At the start of trial, he raised an objection that had never been...
Approach, please.
Your Honor, at this time, could I request that Ms. Benefiel be excused pending further issues that we spoke with the court and allow me to call another witness?
Yes, you may.
Objection.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Benefiel. Thank you, Willie.
Plaintiff's sixth witness.
Faustino Martinez.
Sir, would you please come forward and step into the witness box and raise your right hand so that you can be sworn?
You do solemnly swear that the testimony that you are about to give in the case now in hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Faustino Martinez. It's Faustino Martinez.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good morning, or good afternoon, Mr. Martinez. How are you?
Fine.
Good. My name is Jeffrey Feiger. I represent the plaintiff in this case. Could you tell the court and jury your name, please?
Faustino Martinez.
And Mr. Martinez, are you presently employed?
Yes, I am.
Where are you employed?
Metro Express here in town.
Okay. And what do you do?
I'm a truck driver.
Well, and you're appearing today as a result of a subpoena that we issued to you, correct?
Yes, sir.
At some point, you were a officer, am I correct, with Sedgwick County?
Yes.
Okay, what was your job there?
I was a supervisor.
Okay, and where were you, with whom were you a supervisor? With the jail, with the police, with whom?
I was assigned to the detention facility.
Okay, and you were an employee of the sheriff's department?
Yes, I was.
Okay. How long were you an employee of the sheriff's department?
I went through the academy in February of 1988,
Mm-hmm.
and I resigned in August of 2008.
And is there any particular reason you left the force? You retire or what?
No, I didn't retire.
Why'd you leave?
I wanted to change the careers.
You were assigned to the jail, you indicated?
Yes.
How long were you at the jail?
The full term of my career. I was there for 20 years.
What was your job at the jail?
Well, from 1988 to 2000, in March of 2000, I was a deputy, and then I was promoted to supervisor in March of 2001.
And what was your job?
Which time? Which
Well,
part?
let's say just the job as the supervisor for beginning in 2001.
You want a description? Or I was a supervisor.
Just your general duties. I mean,
Well, at the beginning of my shift, I would create a lineup and take those officers that had called in and try to replace them with another deputy, and just basically assign the deputies to where they needed to work.
okay. And you had the rank of sergeant, am I correct?
Yes,
Okay. And you knew the defendants when you worked there, Staton and Jameson?
yes, I did,
How did you know them? Just as employees?
as employees.
You have any other contact other than the fact that they work at the jail?
No,
You never had socialized with them?
it was basically work-related socialization at the job. That was it.
I'm sorry, I didn't
It
hear
was
that.
just work-related.
Work-related socialization, you mean just coming in contact with them at the jail while you are at work or outside of work?
No, not outside of the job.
Okay.
No.
I notice you have is that a loose leaf binder?
Pardon?
Is that yours that you brought with you, or is
Just, oh, no.
somebody leave that? Could,
I,
maybe just better feel before I want.
Exhibits, the defendant's exhibits.
We can just set them back. You were aware of the responsibilities of the jailers within the pods?
yes, I was.
Okay, they had a responsibility to do rounds, I guess, once an hour?
At least.
Yeah,
Yes.
at least once an hour. And by that, they would have to check on the well-being of the people there, right?
That's correct.
Right. That was there at least once an hour. So if an officer worked beginning at 7 and gets off at 3, at least 8 or 9 times they'd have to do a rounds and check the welfare of each person there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You were involved in the with regard to Mr. Bruner, not expressly, but you had some involvement with him, didn't you?
Very little.
I agree. Much of what your involvement was dependent upon what you were told, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You depend upon, as the boss, you depend upon the jailers to tell you what's going on, or you depend upon them to tell you truthfully what's going on, right?
Yes.
Okay. And if they don't tell you truthfully what's going on, you can't be all things to all people. You really depend upon their eyes and ears on the ground. Isn't that true?
Yes.
So, if in this case, for instance, you were never told by Staton or Jameson that Terry Bruner was found curled up in a fetal position on the floor, unresponsive at about 2 o'clock, were you?
No, I was not.
And if you had been told that, you would have required emergency treatment for a prisoner found on the floor curled up in a fetal position unconscious, wouldn't you?
Yes, I would. Yeah.
You wrote a report based upon what I acknowledge to be very little personal involvement, a lot depending on what you were told by the defendants in this case. Let me say this also.
I don't mind questions. I am bothered by speeches. There's no basis to show that this witness can't answer a question that's not leading. So I object to the statement. I ask counsel just to ask appropriate questions.
Fair enough. Jamie.
Thank you. You also were never told by the defendants that they had knowledge that Mr. Bruner hadn't eaten for 3 days. You didn't know that either, did you? For at least 3 days.
I don't think I was.
And if you had been told that somebody was walking around confused, was not following directions, and hadn't eaten for 3 days, you would have required that medical care be provided to them, wouldn't you?
Some type of medical care, yes.
Here is the report, and you base this report on your own much knowledge as you were provided, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can you see that?
A little blurry, but I think I can manage.
Okay. How's that? Is that a little better?
Better.
Okay. That even a little better?
Yes.
Okay, good. On 310, I was assigned South Housing. Deputy Staton was assigned to Pod 1. I made a physical round to her pod at 10:25. She advised that inmate Bruner did not participate in the linen exchange and wanted to lock him down. I want to start right there. So she wanted to punish him for not participating in the linen exchange?
I wouldn't say punish. That a lockdown could, she was just asked for it. I don't think she was granted that lockdown.
No, I understand. But she has to ask for a lockdown, and a lockdown, I imagine nobody would want to be locked down in their cell. It's kind of punitive. I mean, I'm not saying you did it. I'm just saying that's what she asked for.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So did she tell you, this is at 10:25, that he was found outside the cell? He was identified as being confused, staring down at the ground, that she knew he hadn't eaten for 3 days, and he couldn't get in. He tried 3 times to get into his door, and he couldn't get into his door. Did she tell you that?
At 10:25?
Yeah.
In my report, no,
Okay.
not at that time.
Instead, she told you she wanted him locked down, correct?
At 10:25, yes.
And you did not agree to that, did you?
No, I did not.
Okay. She didn't tell you, I want to get medical care for him, did she?
No.
She said, I want him locked down, correct?
Linen exchange, yes.
And apparently he had done something wrong, which was not participate.
Correct, yeah.
However, she stated that another inmate from that section mentioned to her that inmate Bruner had not eaten in 3 days. And you instructed Deputy Staton to monitor his lunch tray. If inmate Bruner does not eat a lunch tray, to contact me. Deputy Staton advised she took a tray to his cell, and upon retrieving it, she noticed he did not eat his tray or drink his drink that was provided to him. When did she tell you this, by the way? Much late. I can't tell by reading this if this was happening in real time, in other words, or she was advising you maybe much later after her shift or hours later.
Well, the way the report was written, I'm assuming that it was mentioned shortly after mentioning that she wanted to lock him down for the linen exchange for not participating. Because it looks like I'm still in her pod. So in general conversation, that would be at the same time.
Okay.
So,
Deputy Staton advised that inmate Bruner did not come out of his cell and appeared to be depressed and unsocial. Now, you said, upon receiving this information, I notified mental health Skelton Andrea and asked her if she could do a courtesy check on inmate Bruner. Is that correct?
yes.
So it was you, not Staton, who...
Wait a second, Your Honor. This is lack of foundation for the answer or question he's getting to, but he's leading this witness, and that's not appropriate, and I object.
Was it you who made the call for the courtesy check?
It's been asked and answered, Your Honor, and he's again trying to apply something this witness doesn't have a foundation to respond to.
I don't understand the objection. What do you mean he doesn't have a foundation?
It has the
He
question.
doesn't know if somebody else made the phone call before and can't know it, counsel. Does that
I didn't ask him that, Your Honor. I asked him if it was him who made the call for the courtesy check.
Has he already answered that?
No, I read it, and now I'm asking. Was it you?
No. It says I did not make that courtesy call.
Okay.
I
Asked her if she could do a courtesy check. I apologize, I misread that. So you instructed her to do it?
Yes. That's,
Okay. Okay. Do you know if she did it?
I do not.
Okay. At approximately 1400 hours, Rover 1 South, Deputy Jameson, was at Pod 1, and he advised he made a physical check on inmate Brewer, and it appeared inmate Bruner was not doing well. Is that what he told you?
Jameson?
Yeah.
Yes.
He did not tell you that he found Mr. Bruner laying in a fetal position, curled up unconscious.
I do not recall him saying that.
And if he had, you would have immediately gotten medical in there, wouldn't you?
Yes, I would have.
I advised Deputy Jameson that I have contacted mental health and they are aware of his condition. Is that what you said?
Yes.
At approximately 1445, at the watch commander's office, mental health staff was there, and I gave her a booking report printout of inmate Bruner and relayed information to her that inmate Bruner was not doing well. What does that mean, Mr. Martinez?
What part of that do you want?
At 2:45, you gave something to somebody and told them that Bruner was not doing well. Tell me about that. We don't know all that stuff.
Well, as the report says, at 2:45, I was at the watch commander's office, and mental health staff, Andrea Skelton, came in, and I gave her a booking copy of the inmate Bruner and briefed her on his condition. That was relayed to me, Deputy Staton.
Did you ever find out that Mr. Bruner had died later that evening or the next day?
Probably the next day after when I came back to work.
Did you, at that time, go to defendants Staton or Jameson and say, what was going on down there? What happened?
Did I?
Yes.
No, I did not.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Cross-examination.
I want to look at the records that we have available here. Let's see, Defendant's Exhibit 403, I believe, it's the daily activity log. There's a note, I don't know if you can see it or not, Faustino, shows that you were in the pod at 10:25, and then out of the pod at 10:28?
Yes, sir.
And so you would have been in the pod talking with the pod deputy during that time frame. And then there's an RV1s in pod, so that would have been at 10:26. That would have been Deputy Jameson, right?
Yes.
All right, so the three of you were in the booth together, and that's when the conversation came up about Mr. Bruner, right?
Yes.
And then you were asked to write a report the following day, and we've got that report that counsel showed you that's part of Plaintiff's Exhibit 2, which is page 70, and we'll talk about that for a second. But first of all, let's get a clear understanding. Do you remember Terry Bruner?
No, I do not.
Do you remember really any of the events of that day?
No, I don't.
I mean, it's been 4 years ago, and so what you're trying to do is piece together what in your testimony, what happened based on your report. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, physical rounds. Let's talk about that for a moment. is there a difference between a visual round and a physical round?
Yes, there is.
And when you were asked whether or not you were obligated back in March of 2008 to do rounds, and you were saying they should do them more than once an hour, you were talking about what, visual rounds?
I was referring to a physical.
Were you? Okay. Now, there are also in the jail different pods in a different setup. So you may have a indirect pod like pod 1, or you might have a direct pod or a dormitory, right?
Yes.
And the ability to do a physical round in a dormitory or the ability to do a physical round in a direct pod is a lot easier than the indirect pod, is that right?
Yes, it is.
And so your understanding that there was supposed to be one round per hour, would that, assuming that was the policy as you understood it for all pods, well, was it the policy for all pods?
I think it was the policy for all pods.
Assuming it was the policy for all pods, was there a recognition that deputies were not going to, at certain times, going to be able to do physical rounds on a daily basis, one hour a day?
Yes, there is.
I mean, that's the fact of life, is that if you are in an indirect pod like pod 1 and you're on first shift and you've got a bunch of things doing like on a Monday morning, you'll be lucky to get in one physical round, if that.
Correct.
And you were, as a supervisor sergeant, it was your responsibility to, for those areas that you were reviewing, you would look at the logs that were maintained by deputies, or try to when you could, right?
Yes.
I mean, it was the policy, or at least it was your understanding of the policy, that when you were on shift, you were supposed to, for each section that you were responsible to, you were supposed to look at the log from the previous day to verify what was going on and that the deputies were doing their job. Is that right?
Yes.
And we can go back, but I think I've shown you a record on the 9th. For whatever reason, I think you were very busy. You were not able to do a review of the log on the 9th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Again, it was a policy to do it, but if you've got a lot of things going on, it didn't always, you weren't always able to follow that policy.
That's correct.
And you were never punished when you were unable to follow that policy because everybody understood that.
Yes.
And likewise, the deputies who were supposed to, by policy, make physical inspections on an hourly basis were not punished if they were not able to do so because of time constraints.
That's correct.
And as to these reviews or these inspections that were, if you understand, policy is supposed to be done once an hour, that would be easier or harder in indirect pod depending on which shift, right? In other words, it would be easier to do it in third shift where everybody's sleeping, and you aren't sending people out to do visitations or linen calls or showers or all those host of things that happen on first and second shift.
That's correct. Yes.
Now, let me talk to you about the log for a second and then about your report. Again, you worked at the jail for an extended period of time before you decided to make a career change. And you're familiar with the daily activity log and back in 2008, how it was completed and filled out by pod deputies, right?
Yes. Yes, it was.
And what they would do is they would make entries and timestamp them, and then they would kind of save that at a later time, showing what time the entries took place. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
And once saved, you couldn't change it. It became kind of a record that showed what exactly had happened, right?
Right. That's correct.
Now, going to your report, you were asked by counsel a number of questions about what you were told at around 10:25, and we know that, in fact, that's when you were in, was at 10:25 through 10:28. And in your report, I think counsel asked you whether you were told by Deputy Staton that Mr. Bruner had not eaten for 3 days and had been confused. And if I heard your testimony, you said that she didn't tell you that. Is that what you said?
Not at that time, yeah.
Well, but you don't really have a memory one way or the other. You're now trying to interpret your report.
Right. Yes.
And your report does say, however, she stated that another inmate from that section mentioned to her that Bruner had not eaten for 3 days. And I instructed Deputy Staton to monitor his lunch tray. So it's an equally reasonable interpretation of your report that she said, look, I want to lock him down, and by the way, he hasn't eaten for 3 days. And you said, well, here's how I want to handle it. I want you to check on whether he eats at noon. I mean, you don't remember one way or the other, but that's a reasonable interpretation of what you decided to do, right?
Yes.
Now, it's not unusual for inmates in the, was not unusual when you were there, for inmates in the jail to act in fashions that are different than maybe, I won't use me as an example, but you would act out in public. That is, some of them just kind of act a little bit bizarre at times, don't they?
Yes, they do.
I mean, there are many inmates in there, unfortunately, that perhaps that's why they're there, who have mental health issues. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it's not unusual then in the jail to have an inmate who's walking slowly, an inmate who is responding to commands but maybe not real quick, an inmate who maybe appears like they are, well, just out of it. That's not an unusual thing, is it?
No, it's not.
And it wasn't unusual back in March of 2008, was it?
No.
So when you had your discussion, it's quite possible, wasn't it? They said, hey, look, here's a guy that's acting strange. And the new information was that he wouldn't go into his pod initially.
Objection.
And
Excuse me. I've sat here. Counsel has repeatedly made objections and claimed I make speeches. He's not even asking questions. He's just making speeches. They're not even questions.
Well, I think you could shorten up the reading part, but he is asking questions, so...
And they're beyond speeches.
Counsel, sit down, please.
thank you, Your Honor. I've lost track of the question. I'll see if I can't shorten it up. It's quite possible, and it isn't, that when you talked with Deputy Staton and with Deputy Jameson's there in the booth at around 10:25, that you were told, here's a guy that's acting like so many other inmates, but he is reportedly not eating, and you responded saying, well, let's check to see whether or not he should be eating, right?
Yes.
And then when more information came to your attention, either in that conversation or later, the decision was, let's go ahead and have mental health take a look at him, because that was the thought. Here was a guy that seemed to have, like so many other inmates in there, a mental health issue that needed to be addressed, right?
Yes.
Now, counsel says, well, if you had been told that here's a guy that had definitely not been eating for 3 days and he was walking around in a stupor and looking at the ground and deathly ill, what would you have done? Isn't this what you would have done? You would have said, look, based on what we know, he's not eating, let's see if he'll eat, and then let's get him with mental health.
Yes, that's what I would have done.
And that's what you did.
That's...
Now, then it says, at approximately 1400, that's 2 o'clock, right?
Yes.
You talked to Deputy Jameson, and he said that he'd made a physical check on inmate Bruner. And in order to do that, of course, you understand, and we should all understand, that means that Deputy Staton can't get out of her booth and make the physical check. She has to have someone come in and do it. And that's apparently what he'd done.
Yes, that is.
And he told you that Bruner did not appear to be doing well.
You don't remember if he provided you any additional information beyond that, do you?
I do not.
He probably did, but in the short term...
Objection.
What's your objection?
He says, you don't remember if he provided any information? He says, no. Then the counsel says, he probably did. I mean,
That's a question. He can answer it or not.
No, the counsel said, the witness said, no, he doesn't remember. And then the counsel says, he probably did.
I know.
That's not a question.
Well, I understood it to be a question.
I really didn't have a chance to finish it, but I'll try.
Okay.
It's probable, or isn't it, that there was more conversation than just, he's not doing well.
Probably.
Yeah. But when you put your report down, you're trying to capture what it is that seemed important at that time.
Yes.
And what was important was that you decided at that juncture, we need to throttle it up and I need to get involved to get mental health in to see him right away.
That's correct.
And that's what you did.
Yes, it is.
I don't have any other questions, thank you.
Redirect.
You understood my questions to you, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
I didn't try to confuse you or tell you what to say or tell you what probably happened, did I?
My knowledge now.
I didn't say he probably told you anything. I asked you if the defendant had told you that a man was lying unconscious. He had found a man lying unconscious in a cell at 2 o'clock or before, and he had lifted him out of a fetal position into the bed. You told us you would have had him call medical immediately.
Yes.
Okay. So regardless of what there might have been some further discussions, there was no discussion about him telling you what we know happened, was there?
No. That's,
Is it a common sight to see an inmate in a cell curled up into a fetal position, unresponsive, with vomit and soaking in sweat?
Is that a common sight?
Yeah.
No, it is not.
Is that a medical emergency?
Yes, that is.
Counsel says to you, we both know that what happened here is that Mr. Bruner was unconscious laying in the cell. Do you know of any such thing?
No, I do not.
Thanks.
Anything else?
No, nothing further.
Can this witness be excused?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Martinez.
Mr. Chalmers?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, sir. You're excused. Plaintiff's next witness.
Mr. Cook?
Sir, would you step into the witness box right here and raise your right hand so that you can be sworn?
Do you solemnly swear to the testimony you give are about to give the case now hearing, truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Mark Benjamin Cook, M.A. Mark Benjamin Cook, M-A-R-K, C-O-O-K.
Sir, I am having a hard time hearing you, and I bet the other people in the courtroom are too, so if you could scoot up, that would be helpful.
Good afternoon, Mr. Cook.
How you doing, sir?
How are you?
Okay, sir.
You and I have never met before, have we?
No, sir.
We've never spoken before.
I don't believe I have, sir, no.
Okay, you understand you're under oath, and we're here in a trial pursuing the truth.
Yes, sir.
What is your name,
Mark Cook,
and where are you employed?
Sedgwick County Detention Center.
And what is your job?
I am a detention deputy.
You're a jailer?
Yes, sir, I'm a detention
Okay.
deputy.
Did you know Mr. Martinez?
Yes, sir, he was my sergeant.
He was your boss. I'm just going to ask you, if you find a person curled up in a fetal position, unconscious or obtunded with vomit and sweat all over them in the floor of a cell, is that a medical emergency?
Your Honor, there's really no reason for this witness to express an opinion like that. Lack of foundation. Former Sergeant Martinez had reason to explain what he did or didn't do, but this is just asking for a lay opinion. It's not admissible.
Why isn't it admissible? He works in that jail, and the defendants didn't do it. And so he can tell me if that's a medical emergency in the jail.
Well, are you asking him to give an expert opinion, or what are you asking?
No, in your jail, if you do the same job as the defendants, right?
Yes, sir.
If you find somebody unconscious, curled up in a fetal position, in vomit on the floor of a cell, is that a medical emergency?
Wait a second, Your Honor. I don't know if we're getting to standard of care, which has nothing to do with this lawsuit, but I do know he's asking for an opinion, a lay opinion based on observations that this witness did make.
I don't think his opinion on this is really relevant.
It's relevant to this case because the defendants didn't do it. And why would...
The objection is sustained unless you can show why his opinion in particular would be relevant to the jury's deliberations.
Okay. If you saw that, would you ignore it?
Just the same question, Your Honor.
He can ask based on his experience and practice in the Sedgwick County Detention Facility. Go ahead.
If you saw that, would you ignore it?
No, sir.
Okay. You had contact with Mr. Bruner the day before he died. And I want to tell you that they actually removed the tube on his breathing tube on the 12th, but I want you to assume there'll be testimony in this case that he was brain dead on the 10th. So you had contact with him the day before he died, didn't you? On the 9th.
Yes, sir.
I believe you worked the first shift on Pod 1,
Yes, sir.
and that's the same shift the defendants worked, right?
One of them, sir, yes.
And before you came here today, did you have an opportunity to go over your testimony with Mr. Chalmers
I met with him, yes, sir.
and went over what he was going to ask you and what answers you were going to give him?
I met with him. He told me that we're going to go to court.
Well, we just heard your boss, Sergeant Martinez, say that the policy was to do rounds, physical checks on the welfare of each person every hour in that pod. Was Mr. Martinez telling the truth?
Yes, he was telling the truth.
Now, in this, with regard to Mr. Bruner actually told you he wasn't feeling well. Isn't that true?
After he had asked, if I'd asked if he hadn't been eating, yes, sir, he
Is the answer yes? He told you he had not been feeling well.
Yes, sir.
That's another way of saying, I'm sick, isn't it?
No, sir, it just means he said he's not feeling well.
I guess maybe in Detroit this is all right.
Yeah.
But
Counsel, will you guys come forward, please?
So it's your claim that when someone tells you they're not feeling well, they're not telling you they're sick.
Sir, if someone tells me they're not feeling well, they're just not feeling well. I'm not medically trained.
What's the difference between somebody saying I'm sick and somebody saying I'm not feeling well? Since you're not medically trained.
I'm assuming if someone's sick, it could be a common cold, or I don't know, sir.
Nevertheless, Mr. Bruner actually told you he wasn't feeling well, right?
Yes.
And nevertheless, and you also knew that he hadn't been eating for many days. Isn't that right?
I was informed, yes. I was informed I had not eaten for 2 days. It's
Okay.
not uncommon at the jail for people not to eat.
It's not uncommon for the people at the jail not to eat. It's not uncommon for the people at the jail to walk around in a confused state. It's not uncommon for the people in the jail to apparently, what?
If they choose
It was
not to eat, that's
perfectly-
their choice, sir.
I see.
I can't force someone to eat at the jail.
Did you go in and say, what's wrong? Why can't you eat? Are you sick? Can I help you?
No, sir. I asked him if he was okay, and he said yes.
So he said, I'm not feeling well, and then you said, I'm okay, and he said, are you okay? And he said, yes. That's exactly the opposite.
And that's what he told me, sir.
Did that appear to be strange to you? I mean,
No,
even,
sir.
you just took him at his word?
Yes, sir.
And by the way, assuming you saw him, a little more than 24 hours before his brain herniated, your testimony is to the court and jury that he looked good, right?
No, I didn't say he looked good, sir.
He didn't look sick.
I just said he didn't look sick.
He didn't look like a man who we know had double pneumonia, did he?
No, I wouldn't know what double pneumonia looks like, sir.
You ever hear a person cough?
I've heard someone cough, yes, sir.
He didn't look like a man who had sepsis, did he?
I wouldn't know, sir. I wouldn't know what that looked like.
He didn't look like a man whose brain was swelling and he was going to die, did he?
Not that I would know, sir, no.
Did you ask him why he hadn't been eating? Since it's not unusual for people not to eat.
That's when he stated to me he just hadn't been feeling well.
So he told you, I'm not eating because I don't feel well, right?
Yes, sir.
And you didn't get him medical care, did you?
No, sir, because if he chooses not to eat, that's his right. It could be a stomach flu. I don't know, sir.
He refused? Now he's refused not to eat. Instead of, he said, I'm not eating because I don't feel well, as you testified, I believe, under oath, right?
I said that if he chooses not to eat, I can't make him.
Well, you testified under, do you remember giving a deposition in this case?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember testifying under oath? Did you understand you were under oath in this case?
Yes, sir.
On June 2nd, 2011?
Yes, sir.
Did you remember saying, quote, so I asked him why, referring to
What page is this?
page 160, question, beginning at line 20. Okay, when you asked Mr. Bruner about his eating, I mean, did you ask him the same thing you were told by Mr. Williams, whether he had been eating over the last couple days? And do you remember testifying under oath? I believe I did. I believe he said he had not eaten. So I asked him why he had not, and why he had not been feeling well. I think that's what it says. And excuse me, I read that wrong. So I asked him why, and he said he had not been feeling well. I don't remember if I said a couple of days in this. I don't remember. So you were speaking to him. He said, You said, "You're not eating?" And he said,
Small point, but just to clarify, I think that you've misread counsel accidentally. It says, I don't remember if I said a couple days or not in this. I don't remember. I don't know what you meant to overlook.
my question to you is, when you said, so I asked him why he had not been eating, and he said he had not been feeling well. He was refusing, now your claim is that he was refusing to eat, and it had nothing to do with his sickness?
No, sir, I didn't say he was refusing. I said if they choose they don't want to eat, they don't have to eat.
What does that have to do with what I'm asking you?
I'm just saying, if he doesn't want to eat, I can't make him eat.
But he said, I'm not eating because I'm sick.
I'm not just arguing with the witness.
No, he's saying one thing, and the question is, there's a question mark at the end. According to you, under oath, you said, you testified that he told you that the reason he wasn't eating was because he was sick.
He said he wasn't feeling well.
Right. And then you say, I can't make somebody eat. What does that have to do with Mr. Bruner?
If he chooses that he does not want to eat, I can't make him.
And again, my question is, what does that have to do with Mr. Bruner? And he said, because he told you the reason I'm not eating is because I'm not feeling well, not because I don't want to.
Your Honor, the question has been asked and answered. It's argumentative.
So you interpreted him saying, I'm not eating because I'm sick, as he just didn't want to eat?
Your Honor, I object to the question. It's now misstating the testimony. The testimony is he said, I'm not feeling well. That's what the deposition says, and now counsel is trying to, in the pretext of asking the question, reframe the testimony, and I object.
Now, notwithstanding that, you agree you didn't get a medical care, did you?
No, sir.
What would he have to do other than tell you, you have knowledge he's not eating? He tells you he's sick. What does he have to do to get medical care? What more would he have to do?
I don't understand. What I'm saying, sir, is on that is if he is saying that he's not eating because he doesn't feel well, I don't know if he's got stomach flu, he doesn't want to eat. I don't know, sir. I mean, if he falls out in my pod, if he gets sick, falls down, I will take the proper measures. I will call a code.
Right, and that's why you would want to ask him whether he needs to see a doctor.
No, sir. He's a grown man. I believe that he could ask me. If he can answer my questions, I believe he can ask for medical help himself.
I see.
I think it might help the jury if you would tie this in somehow to these two particular defendants.
It is. I'm tying it into these particular defendants because I believe it is the claim by the defense that, and it's going to be the claim, that this gentleman didn't think he looked sick the day before. So why should...
Okay, but have we covered that, though?
Yes, but now I'm trying to say this gives a good indication of why he doesn't get care. And why he had...
How so?
I think this is institutional. I think this is exactly
the institution is not on trial here.
But the jury...
And we talked about this yesterday at the end of the trial. There's only two defendants. This is not a case against the county or anybody else. And unless you have some way of tying what Officer Cook did or didn't do to these two particular defendants, then I think we've exhausted the scope of what's relevant in his testimony. If you can establish that there's some connection, then do it now, and we'll see where we go.
You act the same way as they do, don't you? When I say it's institutional, this is something where a sick inmate, it doesn't matter if it's you or them, isn't going to get care.
Your Honor, it's argumentative. It's asking an opinion that I guess would have him to try to consider and evaluate how the defendant's conduct is or isn't, would be an improper opinion. It is nothing more than trying to try the wrong defendants. He just hasn't filed the right lawsuit.
I mean, I guess you can ask if they get training in not giving care to inmates or something like that, that would be cutting across all the different officers. But again, we talked about this yesterday. There's only 2 people on trial here. They're not on trial. They're 2
Let's
people being
talk.
sued.
Everything that you write down is available to the officers who come on next. So in terms of what they know, their world of knowledge about any particular person, I've been listening now to numerous deputies explain these logs. Do you know what these logs are?
Yes, sir.
These logs are done on a computer, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and once you do them, they're in.
Yes, sir.
And I've heard Mr. Chalmers go through with a lot of deputies, Mr. Murphy, for 45 minutes, how they're in there and they're available for anyone to read, right?
Yes, sir.
So if somebody like you or the defendants want to know what happened or what's been going on with a particular inmate or how long they've been sick or what their problems are, they could look back at the log and see what happened the day before, couldn't they?
I object, Your Honor. There's not any testimony that there's any practice to look back at the logs. We're trying to inject now a negligence standard into a constitutional case.
It has nothing to do with negligence, Judge.
I think he can answer.
Yes,
This-
you can look in a log. You can check someone else's log if you need to, if you feel like you have to.
Right. And especially with somebody who is sick, you could look back and see what happened on the previous shift, right?
You could if you needed to, yes, sir.
Yeah. And in fact, you do exactly that in the inverse when you buy the pod. By that I mean, when you take over for somebody else, that person relates to you what's been going on with the pod, right?
Yes, sir, they tell you
Okay.
information.
Okay. So the information that you write on this log isn't just thrown away. The reason for it is hopefully to advise other officers about what's going on, including the health, safety, and welfare of prisoners, right?
Yes, sir.
And you wrote in your log the previous day about Mr. Bruner, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Well, let's go over what you wrote. Can you read that? Can you see that? I'll read it.
Yes, sir, I can see it.
Okay. Visual round, this is at 10:43 a.m. All appear safe and secure. So that's what you're checking on, the safety and the security of the men there, correct?
Of the jail, of the house.
Okay. 6 inmates up and about. Checked medical watches. All appear to be fine at this time. What does that mean?
That's where we would call them and see if they're okay. They have an active IOF stating that they are a medical watch. IOF.
Help me with understanding, what is a medical watch? It's the first time we've heard that term.
If it's a medical watch, somebody that's been placed on a medical watch, like an IOF is generated, inmate observation form.
It's going on. Inmate Bruner came out of his cell today in just his long underwear. I advised him he has to have his orange jumpsuit on when he leaves his cell. He was acting very strange. Tell us about that.
I had just announced showers and razors, and he stepped out of his cell in his long underwear. He pushed the intercom button to come out.
I know when you were sitting there, though, and writing this, you wrote this, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did anybody tell you what to say?
No, sir.
Okay. You wrote, he was acting very strange. What did you mean?
He was acting different than what I was used to. Somebody just coming out of their cell in long underwear.
Did you ask him? I then spoke to inmate Williams. He said that inmate Bruner has not eaten or come out of his cell ever since he moved into Pod 1. Did you write that?
Yes, sir.
Well, he had moved into Pod 1 on the 7th, morning of the 7th or evening of the 6th. And this is the 9th. That's 3 days later. So, did it concern you that he had not eaten for 3 days?
Your Honor, it'd be nice if he just asked if it would concern you if he hadn't eaten for 3 days, to which I would object to because I don't think it's relevant. But instead, he makes speeches and tries to make his closing argument. I'd like at least to have equal time at some juncture to be able to make my closing argument, but I suggest he just stop doing it.
Why does it matter if he was concerned? Isn't the question here what he communicated to these two particular defendants?
Or what was available to them? I'll go on, Your Honor. So you have documented in the record, available to anybody who comes later, that he has not eaten or gone out of his cell since the moment he arrived. Correct?
Yes, sir.
He was housed in Pod 1, you said, on 3/7/2008. Now, he's standing at his cell door, wanting out, but he has not put on his jumpsuit as of yet, so he didn't follow your directions, right?
That's not uncommon, sir, but yes.
You keep saying that's not uncommon. You mean it was okay? I mean, a man who hadn't eaten since he got there, and you told him to put on his clothes, and he wouldn't put on his clothes, and he told him again, and the answer is, gee, and he's acting strange, and your answer to me is it's not uncommon, right?
Counsel, again, what's the relevance of that?
I don't know, because he keeps saying it's not uncommon. I just asked the witness whether in
But
fact...
you are arguing with him. If you really just want to know what he's talking about, just ask him what he means.
You wrote this down because you thought it was unusual. Isn't that true?
Yes, sir. Somebody coming out in their long underwear? Yes, sir. I thought that was different.
If it was very common, you wouldn't write it down, would you?
No, sir.
So it was very uncommon. That's why you wrote it down. Isn't that true?
Yes, sir.
He has not put on his jumpsuit as of yet. I called into his cell and advised him to come out. He needs to put his jumpsuit on. I asked him if he has been eating. He stated no, he has not been feeling well. Right?
Yes, sir.
And this went onto the computer, and if anybody wants, the next days, people want to look at it, they're free to look at it, right? They're not only free to look at it, that's why it's put on a computer. So if you got any questions about what happened the previous day, you can look at it.
Your Honor, it's now cumulative and it's still argument. I don't know if it's relevant.
Oh,
It goes to deliberate indifference.
It is cumulative. I think we've covered that.
Okay. Here's a document, I believe it's in Exhibit 2 from the Sedgwick County Sheriff, titled Medical, Scheduled Event Medical. What does that mean?
That is when the clinic would either call their people down or do what they had to do that day, sir.
Okay, this is dated the same date as your note 3/9. Do you get this, or is this something in a totally different department than you?
No, sir. There was something on the computer we could print off, sir.
Okay, this is printed off so you'd know who was scheduled to be seen in medical, correct?
Just in our pod, sir.
Sure. And in your pod on 3/9 medical was Terry Bruner, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
No, I don't think that the exhibit or the document is an exhibit 2. I don't have objection to it, but I think we need to make a record of what it is and where.
I thought it was Exhibit 2 because it was produced by Sedgwick County, just the same as all the other documents.
Sedgwick County Council.
I'll locate that, Your Honor, but let's identify it. Could you tell us what this is, and we'll identify it later for the record? I mean, what exhibit it's in. Scheduled event. Tell us what this is, please.
He gives us a briefing on our pod of inmates who may be on blood sugar or something like that, sir.
Okay, so this is on your computer, you're looking at this in the morning when he's walking around. This is also available to you in the morning when he's walking around without his underwear saying he's not feeling well.
No, sir, he had his long underwear on.
Okay, I understand. That's what I meant, underwear, long underwear. This is available to you.
Yes, sir.
So you would be aware that he was scheduled to be seen medical?
No, sir, that is not scheduling him to be seen on that day, sir.
Help me understand what?
From my understanding, the CR is a chart review from the clinic, sir. That means they review their chart.
Okay. That's all it is, advising you that somebody is reviewing their chart?
Yes, sir, that's all I've ever been told
Okay.
it was.
It doesn't advise you of anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. And you didn't, of course, after you made the observation, call them?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, I know this is in Exhibit 2. This is your statement that you wrote out that we've been referring to. Do you remember being asked to write a statement?
Yes, sir.
Did you become aware that Mr. Bruner had died?
I don't remember at that time, sir, when I wrote this, if he had or not, sir.
Were you surprised in light of your testimony that he didn't look sick?
I didn't know. I'm not a doctor, sir. I can't medically.
No, I understand that, but somebody you'd been with them the day before, you found out they died of meningitis. And you've testified you didn't think he looked sick. Well, did it surprise you?
I'm sorry, I didn't even, like I said, I don't remember when I was informed when he had passed away, sir.
Well, it would have been by at least the 12th, wouldn't it have been? March the 12th?
I don't remember, sir.
So you don't remember if you were surprised. You might not have been surprised at all that he died.
Well, I don't know, sir. Like I said, I don't remember being told when he passed away, sir.
Why were you asked to write this document?
I was asked to do so by a supervisor, and I did, sir.
Did you ask, why are you asking me to do this?
No, sir, I don't question my supervisor, sir.
Okay, why don't you read it, or I'll read it aloud. Deputy Cook was assigned at Pod 1 at Sedgwick County Detention. Did you write this?
Yes, sir, that's mine.
At approximately 900 hours, the intercom from inmate Bruner's cell rang on the intercom phone to deputies. I answered the intercom and opened the cell belonging to inmate Bruner. Inmate Bruner came out of the cell in his long underwear. I then called into Section C and informed him that he had needed to put on his jumpsuit before coming out of his cell. Inmate Bruner, moving slowly, returned to his cell and shut the door behind him. A few minutes then went by and the intercom phone rang again and again, and it was inmate Bruner's cell. I looked at him, and he appeared to still have on his long underwear on. I again advised him that he needed his jumpsuit on to enter the day room. Inmate Bruner then put on his jumpsuit, and I let him into the day room. I then noticed he was moving slowly and just staring as if into space. I called him over to the booth, and I asked him if he was okay, and his reply was yes. I then spoke to inmate Williams, Calvin, about inmate Brewer, if he had been acting like this for a while. Inmate Williams replied, "He just stares and looks around at people." Inmate Williams stated Bruner had not eaten for 2 days. At approximately 1000 hours, I did contact my housing, Sergeant Martinez, to inform him of the situation, but I was unable to get a hold of him. I called him on the radio and asked him to call Pod 1. Sergeant Martinez was the only housing sergeant for the day, and I figured he would call when he was not so busy. I thought maybe he was being bulldogged out of his tray, so during lunch I had inmate Bruner come out and get his tray first. Inmate Bruner ate the food on the tray, then watched TV until 2:15 when the pod was racked for shift change. So he ate?
Yes, sir.
What did he eat?
I can't remember exactly what was served that day, sir.
I did assume that inmate Bruner was fine, as I observed him during the day, since he was talking and watching TV with the other inmates. I did, however, inform second shift that he, Bruner, was acting a little different and to keep an eye on him during a shift. Why did you had no idea why you were writing this? You didn't know he was dead?
I can't remember that I was told, sir, at that time.
Well, why else would you want to write a story about how well he was doing or how bad he was doing?
I don't know, sir. I was told to write a report.
So it's your testimony that he was just joking around and watching TV and eating out in the pod the day before, even though you had been told he hadn't eaten since the day he got there?
No, sir. I figured he was getting bulldogs. Somebody was taking his food from him.
And had he taken a shower too?
He came out to take a shower, sir.
Have you ever remember an inmate by the name of Paul Navarrete?
No, sir, I do not.
Were you aware that he said he'd never eaten, and he never came out into the pod once?
He came out on my watch, sir.
Counsel, that kind of editorial commenting is what I just
what?
reprimanded you for.
I'm not even aware of what.
Okay, well, you can listen to it on the court reporter's tape afterwards.
So, explain, please, to us. You assumed he was being bulldogged, bullied, of his food after he told you he wasn't eating because he was sick.
Yes, sir. That does happen in a jail. People will not say somebody's picking on them to have their food and they're giving their trays away or they're taken from them. That does happen, sir.
I thank you. I have no further questions.
Cross-examination.
Explain the bulldog again. How does that come up in the jail in your experience?
Well, sir, I see people that are maybe, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but weaker or smaller than someone else. And they will take their tray. They will tell them to be here, you have to give us your tray. We can't stop everything, we try. But a lot of times the trays, the commissary is taken from people. Or they lose it in gambling bets. Or they owe a tray because they traded for lunch or something else, sir.
So now if you have somebody that you think is being bulldogged, your fear is they'll be reluctant to tell you because, well, for the very reason they wanted to give up the food, I guess. They're frightened of the other inmates.
Yes, sir.
And so if someone were to say to you, I'm sick, as an explanation, you kind of go, well, maybe, maybe not. But in this instance, your conclusion was that he looked like an inmate that was being bulldogged.
Yes, sir.
And then as you watched him after he ate, and you made sure he ate, he appeared to be, I won't say the pink of health, but he appeared to be okay.
Yes, sir. He came over by the deputy's booth where the TV sits in Section C and sat there with the other inmates and that's them watching TV.
Now you made a record, a note, that's in exhibit, I think, 403, which is the daily log. 403. And that was entered, now it looks like you started it at 10:32 and then entered at 10:43 is when it was entered, right?
Yes, sir.
And your observation that he ate and your observations after that were, what, sometime after noon, I'm assuming, right?
Yes, sir.
So you initially had a concern, you documented it, you followed up on it, and then you satisfied yourself there wasn't anything more to do based on your observations.
Yes, sir.
Now, it turns out you were wrong. He was ill at that time, we all know. Did you see signs of illness?
No, sir, I didn't. I mean, I don't know what medically is wrong with people, sir.
Well, you've described everything you remember in terms of his behavior. You didn't describe him as someone that was vomiting, someone that was coughing nonstop, someone that was in obvious pain or distress. Those were none of your descriptions, right?
No, sir. I've never seen any of that.
And you were asked by your supervisor to prepare a report, which you did on March 12, which is in the Exhibit 2. And that's the report that counsel talked to you about a moment ago. You've got it in front of you,
Yes, sir.
or at least it's up on the screen. And it starts out, I, Deputy Cook, because you're the one that prepared the report to be
Yes,
read
sir.
later. Okay. And in this, you recite how you had a conversation with inmate Bruner in terms of his behavior, and he confirmed to you that he was okay.
He stated yes.
So you've got, I don't feel well, I'm okay, and a concern about bulldogging or kind of what's going on with this inmate, right?
Yes, sir.
And then you, after the events of, you talk about the events later in the day after the 10:43 event is when you discuss how you checked on his lunch, or checked and made sure he ate his lunch, and he was fine. So that was how you concluded your report.
Yes, sir.
Now, you communicated that then, it's still a concern, you talk about at the end, to the second shift, that Bruner was acting a little different, and what you meant by a little different there is the whole deal with the jumpsuit, right?
Yes, sir. I thought it was different. They came out with just as long underwear on.
And you communicated that to second shift in the briefing that takes place between sessions, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, in Pod 1, there are approximately, 39 to 40 inmates at any given time, sometimes more.
Yes, sir. It's 38, 39.
Do you, as a pod deputy, have time to go back and review the daily activity log from the previous day,
No, sir.
or even from the previous shift?
No, sir.
Is that why what you rely on is what you're told by way of a reporting in the previous shift?
Yes, sir. During our briefings.
What's an IOF?
It's an inmate observation form, sir.
And that form can be completed if someone is exhibiting medical issues where the deputy is informed that there should be heightened attention should be paid to the inmate. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And where there's an inmate IOF, that's reported on the daily activity log. Is that correct?
If an inmate is specifically listed as a medical watch, yes, sir.
Okay.
The IOF is in the pod notebook.
I mean, we can.
Palmers, I think some of the jurors would like a break. Is this an okay?
This is a
time
perfect
to-
break, Your Honor. Our
Okay.
time.
Let's take a 15-minute recess and resume promptly at 3 o'clock. Court's in recess.